For those of you that don't know me, my name's Leslie, and I oversee the kids ministry here. So I get this opportunity to let the kids head on out. All right? So you can wave to them. They're like, finally, we get to leave. Oh, they are awesome. We love it. Yeah, we got a great team working with them today. So before I get into the message today, I just wanted to take a minute to say thank you. I haven't been up here in a while, and 8 months ago, on December 5th, about 3:08 p.m., I would say, I went into the emergency room thinking there was going to be this quick thing to take care of an issue. And it turned out to be 2 surgeries later and a round of chemotherapy that I had stage 2 colon cancer. But what I can tell you as I stand here 8 months later, God is so, so good. And people on the side have kind of been like, hey, are you doing okay? So I just wanted to take this moment to say thank you. Many of you, I know, were praying for me, and God's grace through this whole journey has been just amazing. It's heightened my awareness and depth of prayer for others, because I know that there's others that are struggling in their own physical ways, but God can do it. If he did it for me, he can do it for you. So thank you for that. Well, you know, even though I am the kids pastor here, I rarely have spoken on kids ministry, family ministry type things, but I really felt like this was the time for me to share something that I'm going to bring about at the end about a project that's related to family discipleship that we as a GrowPoint church get to really have a voice in how this all develops. Now, a couple weeks ago, Pastor Josh was talking, and he was talking about, something came up about parenting, and I was so glad when I heard him say, and he said it in a way that I hadn't heard it before. He said, all of us parent in some way. Now, I don't have kids of my own, but I know that I parent in some ways. And I looked up the word parent in Latin. Now, I realize you're thinking, you need to get a life if this is what you're doing, looking up words in Latin. But here's what the word parent means. It's bringing forth life, which we totally understand, but then nurturing its development. So think about that in a spiritual sense. We are doing that. We're helping to bring forth life in people and to really nurture their development. So as I speak today, I want you to have that lens of focus, all right? Not because some near the end we'll get into some things that may be a little more family-oriented, but I want you to think of it in terms of, hey, in my community, in my workplace, in my neighborhood, where am I bringing forth life and nurturing its development? So this message is for every age, every situation, because we all influence others in their growth. So go ahead and turn to 1 Samuel, and we're going to start in chapter 1, okay? This is about 1,000 years before Jesus was born, all right? And now, because I do work with children predominantly, I have to use illustrations. So are you guys okay with that? All right. Are you sure? You sound a little hesitant. All right, thank you. So, now I didn't draw these on my own because they're so intricate. So check out that's the level of my arts and crafts. My drawing skills are right there. But we're going to recap just the first 7 verses of 1 Samuel because I think it would be fun to tell it more, I want to set up the characters, and then I'm just going to tell it a little more like a story. So you can follow along if you'd like in 1 Samuel 1 there. But our first main character is Elkanah. So say Elkanah with me. All right, Elkanah is the father of Samuel, who we'll discover in a little bit. He's the husband of Hannah. And here's what you need to know about Elkanah. He was a Levite. So Abraham had 12 sons, and then I can't do that without singing, Father Abraham had many sons. And so the Levi was one of the sons. The Levi tribe were the priests. So they were set apart to be the priests that oversaw anything related to the tabernacle, the Ark of the Covenant, all of those things. And so he would have been serving in a particular time of his life as a priest. Now, Elkanah had 2 wives. Now, that was kind of normal back in the day. I can't imagine being a wife and then there's another wife there, but they did it. And it's not something that God really, I think, would have wanted, because so much strife and conflict, competition, all those things would happen between those two wives. Think of Abraham, all right, the father of Israel. He had Sarah and Hagar. They did not get along, oil and water. And then we've got Jacob, who had Leah and Rachel, constant competition between the two. Well, kind of the same with Hannah and Peninnah, because here was the issue. Peninnah was able to have children. Hannah was not able to have children. And that did not go over well at all. Now, one of the things we know about Elkanah is that he was devout in his faith, or in his religion, I would say. That he made sure that he brought his family, the clan, went every year to Shiloh, where the tabernacle was, so they could do their yearly sacrifice. So that was something really good about Elkanah. And he loved his wife. And the reason that we know that is that he would give Hannah a double portion. When they would have their ceremonial meals, she would get the double portion, which was a sign of his love. In fact, he favored her over Peninnah. All right, let's move on to the next one. Hannah. She's sad, really sad. She's the wife of Elkanah. She's the mom to Samuel. I told you she's unable to have children. And she was bullied by Peninnah. In fact, because of her infertility, it brought her a lot of distress. And in fact, in the King James Version, it says, it provoked her sore to make her fret. She intentionally provoked her until she cried and she wouldn't eat. Like Hannah would go into this deep depression. And I was thinking about that in terms of provoked her sore to make her fret. And I was thinking about the other day, I have like this sore at the end, my finger, the end of my tip of my finger was sore. And I'm like, why is that sore? And then I remembered that when I cook, I often cut my fingers. So a little blood and the food better. No, just kidding. You're like, please don't ever make me food. No, but this little cut, every time, you don't realize how many times you tap the end of your finger, and it would hurt me. And I'd think, that's kind of what Peninnah was to Hannah. It was this constant annoyance and irritation, to the point that it just really threw her off in that way. But we're going to find out what a devoted woman of God that Hannah was. There's going to be example after example that we're going to see this morning. And then we have Eli. I made sure that I picked a picture that you would tell. He was a priest. He had 2 sons. His sons were Hophni and Phinehas. These were not good priestly sons. In fact, it says that they were wicked. Here's something that they would do, all right? So the ritual was, when you brought your sacrifice in, that it would get boiled. So it was like, the lamb, the cow, whatever it was that they brought. Well, as it's boiling, then the priest would stick a 3-pronged fork into the meat that's boiling. Whatever came out, that was the priest's portion that they got to have. Well, what Phinehas and Hophni would do is that they would get to people before they got to the point where they gave their animals to be boiled, and they'd say, hey, I need you to cut off this part of the meat because we want that. And the people would be like, that's not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to boil it. There's a whole ritual that God put into place. And they'd basically say, we don't care. This is what we want. So definitely not doing what God had called them to do. But Eli, he was a good priest, but his legacy is more known for how he did not rebuke and discipline his children as opposed to the priestly duties that he did, which is actually pretty sad. So we're going to pick up this story on a difficult day for Hannah. They're in Shiloh at the temple, and probably Peninnah was just being herself and just constantly like annoying her and saying things and stuff. So Elkanah comes on and he says, "Why are you crying, Hannah?" Elkanah would ask, "Why aren't you eating? Why be downhearted just because you have no children? You have me. Isn't that better than having 10 sons?" Seriously, guys, if I can talk to men in the room, this is an example of what not to say, all right? In any kind of situation where a female is upset or grieving, it is not good to say, "Hey, aren't I enough? I'm better than 10 sons." Not good at all. It probably added to Hannah's grief at that point. So I would say to Elkanah, like, "Buddy, read the room," all right? So Hannah's like, just feeling terrible. So we move on to verse 9. Once, after a sacrificial meal at Shiloh, Hannah got up and went to pray. Eli the priest was sitting at his customary place beside the entrance of the tabernacle. Hannah was in deep anguish, crying bitterly as she prayed to the Lord. We get a real picture here of the depth of grief that Hannah was going through as she was crying out to the Lord. And you know, especially related to infertility, I think only if you've experienced that, and I haven't, but the couples that have experienced that would be able to speak to the depth of grief and just discouragement that comes with that. But what I love about this is the way Hannah handled it. It says that she cried out to the Lord and crying bitterly. You know, it doesn't say that she went complaining to friends. Or not that they had Instagram or Facebook back in the day, but she didn't pour out her emotions in that type of way. What did she do? She went to the Lord in raw, like totally vulnerable, and saying, "God, like, this stinks. Like, I'm really having a hard time. I'm devastated by all this and the way that this other wife's handling this and the way she treats me and my husband not truly understanding." I mean, if it was me, it probably would have been a gallon of ice cream, cookies and cream ice cream in my bedroom. You know, like, all right, I'm going to eat this pain away. In fact, I just want to do a public service announcement. Sam's Club cookies and cream ice cream is the best. So if you like cookies, see, Jace knows. He's shaking his head. So, yeah. But Hannah didn't do that. What Hannah did is she said, "Lord, here I am, and I just need to pour that right out to you." And in the midst of that, she made a vow. Now, making a vow to the Lord isn't just a casual desire or promise. It's like covenant, saying, "Lord, I vow that I'm going to do what I say that I'm going to do." So what did she say? And she made this vow. "O Lord of heaven's armies, if you will look upon my sorrow and answer my prayer and give me a son, then I will give him back to you. He will be yours for his entire lifetime, and as a sign that he has been dedicated to the Lord, his hair will never be cut." Notice that Hannah doesn't say, "Oh Lord," as we're sitting on the hillside, or any kind of like nicety. It's, "O Lord of heaven's armies." Hannah knew that she was in a battle. This was a fight. It might not have been a physical fight, but it was an emotional fight that she was going through. And she was calling on all of the armies that God had to say, "I need you right now with me." And Hannah's vow was that she would dedicate her son to be a Nazirite. Let me tell you what that is. It's one who followed Levitical laws to be fully consecrated and holy before God. They truly lived a holy, separated life, which included never cutting his hair as an outward sign that he was a Nazirite. These were the men that would follow every law that there was, that their life was committed to following God's over 600 laws that there were in the Old Testament and keeping themselves separate. That word holy means separated. So that's what they were as a Nazirite. Now, I want to note here, she would not have done that just on her own. She would have needed her husband to agree with that and for them to make that decision together. It would have been very, very unusual for a woman to be able to make that vow on her own. So Elkanah, he's starting to earn some favor back on that one. But here's to me what was really interesting about the vow that Hannah made. Because Samuel was already from the tribe of Levi, which meant that his life was already separate to be to God. In fact, in looking at some of the resources I had, it said that from the age of 30 to 50, if you were a male and you were from the Levi tribe, that was your service to the Lord, was from the time that you were 30 to 50, for 20 years, that this was, you're gonna sacrifice your life to serve at the temple, do whatever was called upon you during that time. So Hannah took something that was dedicated to the Lord and gave it again to him in a greater way. Think about that. This is something that she wanted more than anything in her life. And essentially, it was already going to be dedicated, yet she said, you know what? I'm gonna make a deeper dedication. It's not enough that he would just be from the Levi tribe and at some point serve in the temple, but I want this to be for his entire life. And I wrote this probably for myself, but we may be dedicated to the Lord, but is there greater dedication that the Lord is drawing out of us? And I believe Hannah's a great example of that. I think sometimes in our Christian walk, we get a little bit comfortable with, hey, this is the level, I'm doing all the things, I'm checking the boxes, I'm doing what I need to do, I have this relationship with Jesus. And maybe there's times, like with Hannah, that God's saying, I want to draw something deeper out of you. Something that maybe you didn't even know that you had within you. And that's what was happening with Hannah. And I, through these last 8 months, I have become like a ferocious reader. I probably read 2 books a week now. I just love it. I love to read. And so I had a book come across my recommended readings list. And I don't know if anybody's read this before, but it's called The 5 O'Clock Club. Anybody read that? All right, maybe I can inspire you today. Because the 5 O'Clock Club is all about maximizing your mornings. So we're talking about 5 o'clock in the morning. Oh, yeah. So getting up at 5 o'clock and then having extra hours to, I don't know, be more productive, whatever the case would be. But for me, when I saw that book and I listened to a little bit of a summary of it, I'm like, I believe God's calling that for me. Because how many times do I get to the end of my day and I'm like, oh, I didn't really do my devos today, or I didn't, and it's not a legalistic thing. I truly get life out of being in the Word. And I'm missing that life because I've just started my day too quick. Of course, mine would be more like the 7 a.m. club. I'm not quite ready for the 5 a.m. club. But the point being, what is God drawing deeper? What sacrifice would I be willing to make? And not, again, we're not about legalism here. We're about relationship. How can I further my relationship with Jesus? And would it be getting up earlier? So far, it's been a really, really good book. So if you want to start a book club, just let me know. I could use the accountability. I was also thinking, this has probably been a year or two ago, Pastor Josh did a message on tithing. And, kind of behind the scenes, when it comes to tithing, pastors do not like to talk about tithing because there's always this concern that it's going to be somebody's first Sunday. They're going to come in and they're going to think, oh, this church is all about money, which is not true at all. In fact, I know our church council has to encourage him to talk about tithing. But tithing is all about giving your first 10% in gratitude to the Lord. And so Pastor Josh brought that out in such a great way. And, I've been giving my 10%. That's been great, all of that. But I felt the Lord say, what would another 1% do? And I'm like, 11%? That's not an even number. No, I kept it at 11. But again, it's that, where might God be calling you to dig a little bit deeper in showing your gratitude for him, in your devotion to him, which I do believe Hannah, again, gives a great example of. So let's move on to verse 12. As she was praying to the Lord, Eli watched her, seeing her lips moving but hearing no sound. He thought she had been drinking. Must you come here drunk, he demanded? Throw away your wine. Oh, no, sir, she replied. I haven't been drinking wine or anything stronger, but I am very discouraged, and I was pouring out my heart to the Lord. Don't think I am a wicked woman, for I have been praying out of great anguish and sorrow. All right, I am not man-bashing at all, but here's another man who did not read the room. So Eli comes in and he's like, she's drunk. No, she was just praying out to God and just pouring her heart out to him. And so I love what Eli says then. He says, in that case, Eli said, go in peace. May the God of Israel grant the request you have asked of him. Oh, thank you, sir, she exclaimed. Then she went back and began to eat again, and she was no longer sad. Eli spoke a prophetic word over her when he said, may the God of Israel grant the request you have asked of him. There's also translations that say, and may his favor be upon you. Now, I love, again, Hannah's example of not doubting him, not saying, oh, you're just saying that to make me feel good. Or what right do you have to say that? You don't know how I'm feeling. No, she took it as the word of the Lord, and there was an immediate change in her countenance. It said she was no longer sad, and she began to eat again. Another great example of how we can respond in times like that. So let's fast forward a year later. Hannah does have a baby and names him Samuel. So the next year, Elkanah and his family went on their annual trip to offer a sacrifice to the Lord and to keep his vow. But Hannah did not go. She told her husband, wait until the baby is weaned. Then I will take him to the tabernacle and leave him there with the Lord permanently. Whatever you think is best, Elkanah agreed. Stay here for now, and may the Lord help you keep your promise. So she stayed home and nursed the boy until he was weaned. I truly love that about Elkanah because it showed his support for her. It's like, you know what? We're in this together. Yeah, I want you to do what you think's best. If it's staying here, and may the Lord help you keep your promise. So he was an encouragement to her in that time. Now, this is really good because first service, we had a baby, a real little one that was sitting right back there. This service, we got a little baby, and it's just a great, object lesson in terms of putting yourself inside this story. How difficult would it have been for Hannah, the thing she most desired, a baby boy, and then she makes a vow to say, you know what? If God grants my request, I'm going to consecrate him. I'm going to dedicate him for a life of service in the temple. Imagine, this is on her mind now. A baby's, in that time, 3 to 4 years old, was weaned. And so in her mind, she's got 3 years to think about this. I love my little baby. Now he's walking. He's hitting all these milestones. But I know that I'm giving him back. That hits deep, doesn't it? Really, really deep. So when the child was weaned, Hannah took him to the tabernacle in Shiloh. They brought the boy to Eli. Sir, do you remember me? Hannah asked. I am the very woman who stood here several years ago praying to the Lord. I just keep thinking she had all this time to back out. I don't even know if Eli remembered her. It's like she had to remind him who she was. But she remained faithful. She says, I asked the Lord to give me this boy, and he has granted my request. Now I am giving him to the Lord, and he will belong to the Lord his whole life. And they worshiped the Lord there. Wow. Seriously, that should hit at a whole nother level. What I love about this example of this is what I would call radical commitment to Jesus. And I had said earlier, sometimes we get on this level and there's some compromise, there's some, hey, this would be okay. And yet the blessing that comes when we allow the deep things to be brought out in us. The very thing she longed for the most, she followed through and was giving him back to God. For many of us, that would be relationships. That would be people. It also could be material type things. You know, we had this program that we did. It was called Cleansing Stream here at the church. And many, many people went through Cleansing Stream. And it was an inner healing type thing, really good. And it got to a lesson pretty far along in it. And it was all about consecration. And I believe the question came, would you be willing to consecrate your husband, your wife, your children, your best friends to the Lord and say, Lord, they're yours. Whatever you do, I trust you and I believe you. And you know what? There were people that dropped out of Cleansing Stream when they got to that lesson because they said, I can't do that. And I don't fault anybody for that at all. It's a hard reality that what Jesus would be asking. You know, when I was in high school, I grew up here. It was Amherst Foursquare Church back in the day, family fellowship. And we had a great youth group, great youth leaders, all of that stuff. But I remember probably in like my sophomore year or so of high school that I got this magazine in the mail. And it was called Last Day's Newsletter. I don't know if any of you were in the era of Keith Green. Yeah, there we go. Keith Green, I feel like, discipled me into a deeper relationship with Jesus. Because he was, I'm going to use my phone to bring up just some of the lyrics of his songs. Because I had never heard people talk like this. And I mean, they might have, and maybe I didn't listen well enough. But it says, one of his songs, make my life a prayer to you. I want to do what you want me to. No empty words and no white lies, no token prayers, no compromise. And it would hit me deep as like a 15-year-old. I was like, yes, that's who I want to be. And then there's a song, to obey is better than sacrifice. I don't need your money, I want your life. And I hear you say that I'm coming back soon, but you act like I'll never return. And I'd be like, Jesus, wow, is that me? I don't want that to characterize me. And then there's a song that says, I pledge my head to heaven for the gospel. And no matter whatever the cost, I'm going to count all things lost. And that talks about pledging your wife, your son, your kids, all those things. And I've started listening to Keith Green's music again because the words are so simple and they go to the heart of who I want to be as a devoted follower of Jesus. And you know, I'm jumping ahead here a little bit, but you know, I'm sure Elkanah and Hannah prayed again that she would have more children, and she did. She had many more children, and God blessed her, and every year she was able to go to the temple. It says in the Bible that she made Samuel a little robe that he would wear. Every year she'd get to see him, and I can't imagine like the joy that she had in that. So to end this story real quick, it says, one night Eli, who was almost blind by now, had gone to bed. The lamp of God had not yet gone out, and Samuel was sleeping in the tabernacle near the ark of God. Suddenly the Lord called out, Samuel. Yes, Samuel replied, what is it? He got up and ran to Eli. Here I am, did you call me? I didn't call you, Eli replied, go back to bed. So then this happens again, All right? And the Lord called out again, Samuel. Again, Samuel got up and went to Eli. Here I am, did you call me? I didn't call you, my son, Eli said, go back to bed. Samuel did not yet know the Lord because he had never had a message from the Lord before. So this is the first time that he heard the Lord's voice. So the Lord called a third time. And once more, Samuel got up and went to Eli. Here I am, did you call me? Then Eli realized it was the Lord who was calling the boy. So he said to Samuel, go and lie down again, and if someone calls again, say, speak, Lord, your servant is listening. So Samuel went back to bed, and the Lord came and called as before, Samuel, Samuel. And Samuel replied, speak, your servant is listening. What Samuel was in that time is he was a coach or Eli was a coach to Samuel because he taught him to hear and respond to the voice of the Lord. So here's where I want to land and circle back today is what is it that was in Samuel's life that contributed to him being a committed follower of God, and I would say Jesus as well? Well, number one, he had Elkanah as his father. His father made sure that they came to the temple every year. There was a commitment of consistency that was in this dad's life. And I think there's a key in that. So I'm speaking to you as men and fathers in that. And then he had a mother who modeled authentically pouring out her heart to God and consecrating her son to God and willing to do whatever God asked her to do. Again, a level of dedication that would truly make a difference, that God honored in that. And then lastly, a spiritual coach, perceiving what God is saying, coaching Samuel on what to do. And you know what? Eli didn't have his life together. That's why I explained about his two sons. And sometimes I think we're like, oh, I can't really pour into somebody else because my life is kind of messed up right now. There's example after example in the Bible where people that didn't have it all together, God used them. So I encourage you today, don't let that be an excuse to you. So as we move into the fall, this story to me is a great foundation of what I'm about to share with you. And we're part of a Foursquare movement of churches. Some would call it a denomination, but we've got almost 2,000 churches in the United States, of which we're a part of, and then there's like 60,000 that are overseas. Brazil has thousands of Foursquare churches there. And so our Foursquare movement was able to receive a grant from the Eli Lilly Foundation. Now, Eli Lilly is the one who makes pharmaceuticals, make billions of dollars a year, I know. And we were able to get a $1 million grant, which is amazing. And it's very specific on what that grant is for. And what the grant is for is to help families know how to pass on their faith to their children. And I believe today that the message we heard about Hannah and Elkanah and Eli shows us that in order to pass something down, we got to be passing down the right things in order to have little Samuels, to have girls that have the heart of Hannah. And so the Cornerstone Project has 4 specific areas that they're looking at. So those are Bible reading, prayer, Sabbath, and faith conversations. Now, because Eli Lilly is a research-oriented company, what they have done is said, we don't want you just to do things and get it out there. We want research behind it. So we as GrowPoint get to have a voice in what kind of resources are developed out of this money that was given, all revolving around prayer, Sabbath, Bible reading, and faith conversations. Because I'm actually part of the team that's doing this. So I get to talk to churches all across the United States and how to implement this. But here's the cool thing, that we're gonna develop resources, and as we move into the fall, we're gonna be testing those resources through our families here at GrowPoint. Now, the first step of this project is that our church, and this would be households. So whether you have children or not, this would be your household. So just one per household. And if you're not sitting with somebody from your household, if you want to, once we start this, you can move by then, because it's great conversation. Because the survey says, out of those 4 things, how strongly do you believe this is important? And then the next set of questions says, okay, how much are you doing what you feel is important? Now that information for us as GrowPoint, we're gonna get our own church information. It's gonna help us know, where do we target resources for our families and for our church? Because if we say that Bible reading's really important, but nobody's praying, what do we need to do to help target that? And it's daily rhythms. We're not saying start an early morning Bible study. Well, maybe if you do the 5 a.m. club, but but more like, hey, on your way to school, how about a mirror hanger that just asks a question? What about intentional faith conversations instead of just like non-life-giving discussions that happen many times in our home? What if there was an intentionality that went behind that? So I'm asking for your help this morning. We're gonna put up we have a QR code. This is a survey. It's it won't take more than 5 minutes, okay? So what I'm asking is, if you have a phone and can put your camera on the QR code, if you would fill out those questions. If you don't have that, or if it's difficult, because sometimes it doesn't work, we have paper copies that Mark and Lisa have. So if you would like to have a paper copy, just go ahead and put your hand up, and they're coming down the aisle. And again, 1 per household. And so on the drop-down menu for that, we are church number 26. We have over 200 churches that have shown interest in it. So we're having calls about that, and it's truly exciting. So there's about 10 questions or so, and just be honest with it, it's completely anonymous. And again, whether you have children in your home or not, this is going to help get a picture of us as GrowPoint, of what are areas that are doing really, really well, and how can we serve you better? Okay, so Nico's gonna go ahead and give some background music, kind of talk these things out between you, even if, I filled it out for my home, it's just me and my brother in there, but it's all about households. If you have any questions, let me know. Again, we're church number 26, and you can do a paper copy or a online copy. Take about 2 more minutes or so. Just give me a thumbs up when you got it. When you're done. As you're finishing, I hope this doesn't distract you, but I wanted to read to you how important this is. In 2021, there was a research study that was done. And a number of studies show that beyond a doubt, the parents play the leading role in shaping the character of young people's religious and spiritual lives, even well after they leave home and often for the rest of their lives. Furthermore, this parental influence has not declined in effectiveness since the 1970s. In the research, they measured what had the greatest impact of levels of religious importance 10 years after the kids left home. So this is asking probably 28 to 32-year-olds, what had the greatest impact on you? He wondered whether it was an increase in parents' own religious faith, parents' more frequent religious service attendance, or parents talking with children about religion that would affect a change. Here's what they found. Increasing parents' own religious faith by 1 standard deviation, meaning 1 consistent habit, increased faith in their children 10 years later by 24%. Pretty good. Increasing parents' religious service attendance by 1 standard deviation, increased faith in their children 10 years later by 29%. But increasing parents talking about their religious faith at home by the same 1 standard deviation increased faith in their children 10 years later by 66%. Conversations, talking about how good Jesus is. Talking about when you're afraid, we can go to the Word. Talking about your highlights of the day. May GrowPoint be a place where we're willing to grow in our just interaction and communication, in our home, in our friendships, community, just talking about the Lord. Imagine that 66% increase 10 years later in young adults because of a practice that happened in their home. Lastly, I talked about we're going to be testing resources in the months ahead. The first one I'm really excited about is a back-to-school scavenger hunt. Now, this feels like it would be really for parents with children that are in school. And what it is that they send you on a prayer walk to find, for example, the flagpole and pray for unity, the school sign, a tree, the light pole, like all sorts of different things. And it guides you each step of the way. And so we're going to have these as you're leaving. Again, not just for parents. I think it'd be awesome if adults without kids would come and pray at our schools. And you can do this on your own or in a small group. But I'm going to set up one for our Powers Elementary School. Next Wednesday at Powers, they're having, I think it's called Popsicle with Principles, and it goes from 6 to 7 o'clock p.m. At 7:15 p.m., I will be, and I hope I'm not on my own, at the front doors of Powers Elementary in Amherst, and we're going to walk through this, doing a scavenger hunt, praying throughout that campus, because that's probably most of our younger kids in Amherst would go, because it's a pre-K through 3rd grade school. If any of you are like, hey, I would love to organize something, let me know, and I'll get the communication out there. But how exciting to have practical tools that we're going to use to help families in really passing on their faith to the next generation. You all can do it. Coaches, we need you. Grandparents, moms, dads. I talked about Chuck Barnes last service. He was at kids camp. He started in kids camp in 2006. And this guy, you should have seen the patience he had with these boys. It was amazing. Chuck is a coach, and we need more coaches. We need you. So let me pray, and then I'll send you all out to have a great rest of your Sunday. We have beautiful days, weather-wise, again, in these next few days, so I hope you enjoy them. Lord, thank you so much for the examples in this story of young Samuel. May we see a generation of Samuels and Hannahs arise that rely on you, that are willing to live a life separated because they know how much they love you and it pleases you. So Lord, we thank you for that. Give us great times ahead and until we see each other next week. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. All right. Also next week, Wednesday night, if you are interested in the special needs ministry, we're having a meeting 6:30 Wednesday night here. We've got 30-some people already signed up. We are excited about that. So there's the code for that.